guys, and welcome back to my channel Basics the Strong Roots. My name is Richa Yadav and today we will discuss some confusing terms of accounting just like freehold property, credit for expenses, return inward, return outward, preliminary expenses. So let's start with the term freehold property. What is freehold property? Freehold property is which is free from anybody's hold. The owner of the property is the individual owner of that particular property. Property is any kind of land and building. Normally what happens on any land and building, there are involvement of some government entities also, and some private investors are also involved in that particular property. But freehold property is that only the owner of the property is the sole owner, or he is the proprietor of that particular property. Now how we will do the accounting of freehold property? Freehold property will be written in the asset side of the balance sheet. Say if any kind of land and building amounting rupees 5 lakhs, small piece of land a company is having, then this freehold property will be recorded in the asset side of the balance sheet. This is asset side, which is right side of the balance sheet. Then this will be recorded as freehold property. This is liability side, and this is balance sheet. I'm writing in a very short. Okay, so now let's discuss the term creditors for expenses. What is creditors for expenses? As we all know, who are creditors? Creditors are the people the company owes to them. Mainly, everyone knows that creditors are the people who provide some money or raw material on credit to the company. Like the company cannot pay directly to them, or it is not necessary to make instant payment to them. They can provide the raw material which is related with the product or production of the company. They can provide on credit also. That's why if we are payable to them, they are called creditors, and we write those creditors in the liabilities side of the balance sheet. That is nothing but the left side of the balance sheet. Now what is creditors for expenses? So creditors for expenses is the creditors, mainly the creditors to whom we call purchase creditors, but there are some kind of service providers also. Purchase creditors provide us the material, that is related material and money which we use in for production purpose. So those are called purchase creditors because their lending is related with our production. But there are some kind of service providers also. So who are the service providers? Which provides who provide their services to us? Just like which kind of services we can get. Sometimes what companies do, companies outsource their business, like their administrative the whole administrative thing, the office work for a particular unit and something. So these kind of service providers are the people from whom we get the services, and we provide our entire work of a particular unit or for a whole business to them. So what happens, like for some time it can happen that we did not make payment to them. So if there is any kind of payment is pending, that is called creditors for expenses, because those creditors are providing their services to us. Just like there are some kind of expenses, wages, overhead charges and administrative expenses, which are actually very necessary to note for a company, because there are some if a company is into production or any kind of business, these operating expenses are going to happen. That is mandatory, and there will be some kind of office work also. If it is not possible that the company will produce things only, or they will do the production kind of things only, they need to set up an office also, and they will do all kind of official things also, which is mandatory. So the people who are providing us their services for all these things, like the we can call them service suppliers. So if we did not make them payment, and the payment is pending to them, outstanding to them, or we can say accrued to them, we call that creditors for expenses. So how do we do the accounting of creditors for expenses? See, if creditors for expenses is given in the trial balance only, then it will be shown in the liabilities side of the balance sheet. But if it is shown in the adjustment thing, like for students, it is, I'm telling this for students, if it is given in the adjustment, then this creditors for expenses, that is called accrued expenses, like these will be called as accrued expenses. When we will prepare a balance sheet, then it will add it to the you know these expenses with which this is related. Like if it is creditors for expenses related with wages or overhead charges or administrative or rent or something, then we will add uh, as an accrued expenses in that particular expense, and again we will show it in the liability side of the balance sheet. So the creditors for expenses we are going to show in two places of the final accounts of the company. So now you can see that as I said, I have written it on the board because I just didn't want to waste the time. So credited for expenses, how we will do the accounting? If it is given in the trial balance, then it will be recorded in the one place of the final accounts only, that is liabilities side of the balance sheet. But if it is given in the adjustments, then we will add these expenses as an accrued expense with the related expense for which it is given, and again we will show only this amount in the liability side of the balance sheet. Now let's discuss the term return outward. What can go outward from a company? The purchases which we have bought from some other person, the purchases, the raw material, and we are returning that particular products because we didn't like that, and there can be some kind of discrepancy in those raw material. So we can return those products or raw material. So that is return outward is nothing but purchase return. Whatever we have purchased from others, if we will return that, we will send them outside of our company or our factory, that will be called purchase return. Return outward is nothing but purchase returns. So how will we will do the accounting of purchase returns? So we will purchase returns, we will deduct the amount of purchase returns. Mainly we consider the value, purchase return की जो भी value होगी, how we will get that? Quantity into price per unit. So we consider the value. So the accounting of purchase return is done on the debit side of the trading account, and we will deduct the value of purchase return from the value of total purchases. See, if the total purchases we did for a particular financial year is 50,000 rupees, the value, then we will return these purchases returns. Say the purchases returns value is 2000 rupees, then the actual purchases amount will be recorded as 48,000 rupees. 50,000 minus return outward 2000 rupees, then the net purchases that will come in the main column of the trading account will be 48,000 rupees. So the recording of the return outward, that is nothing but the purchase return, will be done in the debit side of the trading account, and it will be deducted from the purchases of the company, and the net amount will be shown in the debit side of the trading account. So now which term we are going to discuss, that is return inward. What is return inward? Return inward is nothing but sales return. If we can return some people's product, then they can return our product also because of some discrepancies or unwanted products. So return inward is something which is coming inside of the company, that is called sales return, because we have sold the products and they have gone outside of the company, but if they are returning that particular product that is coming inside the company, that's why it is called return inward, and that is nothing but sales return for a company. So how we will do the accounting of sales returns? The accounting will be done as we did it for purchase return. We will reduce the value of sales returns. How we will get the value? Quantity into price per unit. We will get the value for sales return. We will deduct the sales return amount from the total sales. Say if the total sales is 50,000 rupees and return inwards value is 2,000 rupees, then the net sales will be recorded as 48,000 rupees, where in the credit side of the trading account. So the accounting of return inward, that is sales return, is done on the credit side of the trading account by deducting that particular amount from the total sales, and the net sales will be recorded in the credit side of the trading account. So now the last term is preliminary expenses. What are preliminary expenses? जिसको हिंदी में हम प्रारंभिक व्यय भी कहते हैं. Preliminary expenses are the expenses which are occurred at the very initial stage of a company. Like when the company gets incorporated, these are the expenses which are occurred by the company. Just like legal expenses, like government and court related expenses, because company needs to do the registration and those are so much of formalities which a company needs to do, like, and professional fees, like the company needs to pay the lawyer and the CAs, stamp duty for the registration purpose, printing fee for company's memorandum, and there are a lot of things a company, we will discuss it in some other video, the whole process that the company need to print their memorandum for registration purpose, and many other things. So these are the expenses. Preliminary expenses are the expenses which a company occurred while it's getting incorporated. So जब भी कोई company incorporate होने start होती है, the company starts for the very initial stage, the entire process, the company occurs which expenses, those are called preliminary expenses. But the company never records these expenses in its profit and loss account. Why? Because these are the incorporated, like the company is incorporating and starting doing the startup, and if the company will show these expenses in the profit and loss account of the company, in the debit side of the profit and loss account, then that will be a manipulated kind of data, and that will be not the correct figure from manufacturing process to the whole net profit thing which we get in the profit and loss account. So this will somewhere disturb the data of the company, so they never record these preliminary expenses in the profit and loss account of the company. So what happens when the company records these expenses, the company starts writing off these expenses year by year with its net profit. So how the company does it, let's discuss it. So let's say the company's preliminary expenses were 1,50,000 rupees. So how the company will do the accounting for these preliminary expenses? Preliminary expenses, debit 1,50,000 and to bank account 1,50,000. This will be the very starting, or you can say initial entry for recording preliminary expenses. But as I said, the companies write off these expenses year by year. So how they will do this? So the company has decided that they will write off these particular expenses in next 5 years. So how they will do it? If the company has decided that 1,50,000 rupees they will write off in next 5 years from their net profit, then as per calculation, the company is going to write off 30,000 rupees every year. 1,50,000 divided by 5. So the company is going to write off 30,000 rupees every year, and the remaining amount, like in the first year the company has written off 30,000 rupees, then how much the remaining amount will be there? 1,20,000 rupees will be recorded as miscellaneous expenses in the asset side of the balance sheet. Yes, so how we will do the entry for writing off these preliminary expenses which we are writing off every year, that is 30,000 rupees. So the entry will be, I have already written this for the sake of the time. Preliminary expenses written off debit will be 30,000 rupees, and two preliminary expenses credit, that will be credit 30,000 rupees. लास्ट एंट्री में क्या हुआ था? प्रिलिमिनरी एक्सपेंस हमने डेबिट किया था, तो अगर डेबिट हुआ है तो क्रेडिट भी होगा. तो राइट ऑफ करते वक्त प्रिलिमिनरी एक्सपेंस रिटर्न ऑफ एक अकाउंट बनेगा, दैट विल बी डेबिट बाय 30,000 रुपीज, एंड टू प्रिलिमिनरी एक्सपेंसेस will be credited by 30,000 rupees. At profit, yes, so there is a small correction from last video. In last video I have written in a hurry that when we charge the preliminary expenses to the profit and loss account, we credit the preliminary expense account, but it is actually the preliminary expense write-off account by 30,000 rupees. So let's revise the entries for preliminary expenses. In the initial stage, when we done the payment of preliminary expense, then we made the entry preliminary expense account debit to bank account by 1,50,000 rupees. Then we said that we will write off this amount in next 5 years. Then 30,000 rupees is going to write off in every year by the profit of the company. So how we will do the company to write off these preliminary expense? Preliminary expense written off account debit by 30,000 rupees, and to preliminary expense credit will be 30,000 rupees, because we are writing off this much amount every year. And how we will charge this amount? Because we said that we are going to write off the preliminary expense from the net profit of the company. So the net profit of the company will get reduced by this particular amount of 30,000 rupees every year. So how this amount will be charged to the profit and loss account of the company? Profit and loss account debit by 30,000 rupees to preliminary expense written off account 30,000 rupees. So we will record this preliminary expense written off amount of 30,000 rupees in the debit side of the profit and loss account. Then it will automatically reduce the net profit of the company by 30,000 rupees. And the same entry for profit and loss account we are going to use for next 4 years also, because we will write off 30,000 rupees every year until the account of preliminary expense reaches to 0. So here, when I was preparing the ledger of the preliminary expense, so to bank account 1,50,000, and here written by preliminary expense written off account 30,000 rupees. So the balance will be 1,20,000 rupees. Sorry, the 2 is 1,000 rupees, which will be recorded as miscellaneous expenses in the asset side of the balance sheet, because this is a deferred asset which is overpaid. So it will be recorded in the asset side of the balance sheet. Hope you guys understood these a little bit confusing terms of accounting, and if you think that I have not explained anything correctly and I was wrong somewhere and I did any kind of mistake in journal entries, so please do write in the comment section, and like, share and subscribe my channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon, because whenever you will press the bell icon you will get the notifications of my new videos. Stay safe, stay home, bye bye, take care.